When we look at a modern city, the grids, the traffic laws, the sheer efficiency of millions of people living shoulder to shoulder, it feels inevitable. We assume human progress was always going to lead us exactly here. But roll the clock back 5,000 years. Humans, scattered across the globe, suddenly began building complex societies from scratch, and they looked nothing like one another. Civilization did not happen by accident. It was a forced response to the physical earth. The terrain itself dictated how we had to organize, innovate, and survive. To understand the structure of our modern world, we have to look at how the mud, rivers, and mountains wrote the original blueprints for humanity. We start in the Middle East, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. These waters were notoriously violent, prone to bursting their banks with zero warning and washing away entire harvests. Surviving that chaos required intense human organization. People had to dig canals and store surplus grain. To track those logistics, they developed the first written language. Coordinating thousands of laborers against a hostile environment also required strict rules. They carved a massive code of laws into stone, making punishments formal, public, and absolute. The environmental chaos of Mesopotamia is what forced the invention of top-down, structured administration. Over in North Africa, the Nile River offered a completely different reality. Every year it flooded with gentle, perfect predictability, depositing rich, fertile soil along its banks. That reliable geographic gift secured the food supply, allowing ancient Egypt to maintain a single, stable political structure for 3,000 years. When the survival of the living is no longer a daily question, a culture can turn its energy toward the permanence of the dead, directing its massive labor surplus into the afterlife. Predictable, generous terrain breeds stable authority. It allows a culture to look past mere survival and focus on a monumental legacy. Further east, the Indus River basin provided a vast, steady environment capable of supporting widespread populations across over 1 million square kilometers. This geography allowed the Indus people to prioritize unparalleled civic engineering. They built the ancient world's first grid-planned cities, complete with advanced urban sanitation and covered drainage systems. Yet you won't find giant palaces or royal monuments dominating these ruins. The architecture points to a highly egalitarian society, obsessed with planning and public utility. When an environment effortlessly supports large-scale agriculture, a civilization can scale up through standardization and infrastructure, rather than top-down tyranny. China's Yellow River carried a much darker reputation. Historically known as China's Sorrow, the river was prone to severe, course-changing floods that could wipe out entire regions. Managing a river that volatile required immense, centralized human coordination. People sought guidance for agricultural survival, carving questions into bone and shell, creating the earliest forms of Chinese writing. The burden of controlling this landscape necessitated a deep bureaucracy. To legitimize that massive state power, they developed the mandate of heaven, the idea that a ruler's authority relied entirely on their ability to govern effectively and keep order. Intense environmental burdens forged deeply centralized, enduring state structures required to keep a massive society from fracturing under the pressure. In the Mediterranean, rivers take a back seat. Greece is a landscape of jagged mountains and isolated islands. This rugged terrain physically separated communities, preventing any single ruler from consolidating power over the whole region. Instead, small, independent city-states were forced to compete for survival. Because they couldn't easily expand their borders across the rock, they had to optimize the power they already had, developing rhetoric to convince their neighbors and logic to navigate a world they couldn't simply conquer. Fractured, isolated geography prevents monopoly. It forces rapid intellectual innovation by keeping communities locked in constant competition. Rome, meanwhile, sat on a highly defensible peninsula. It had vast, fertile plains to feed a growing army and perfect central access to the Mediterranean Sea. This prime geographic positioning gave Rome a structural advantage, allowing it to become an unmatched expansionist juggernaut. To manage that sprawling expansion, Rome had to invent complex legal systems and massive physical infrastructure to stitch the world together. Central, connected geography naturally scales into a vast administrative empire. It requires roads and laws to build the borders that nature failed to provide. These ancient cities functioned as isolated experiments in human organization. The specific tools they forged to survive their terrain, the codified laws, the deep bureaucracy, the grid-planned infrastructure, and democracy, did not turn to dust when their empires fell. When we navigate the modern world, we are living inside the geographical blueprints drawn up millennia ago. These are the foundational patterns of human civilization.